The purpose of this training video is to go over section 3 of the application, the budget section. The first page is pretty unchanged. It is a budget summary. You just need to fill out each total amount requested for personnel, travel, operating expense, contract fee for service for county and tribe, and then the total of the subawards. Below that is the budget requirements. All budget requests must be allowable, cost-effective, and necessary for project activities. So underneath here is what we mean by that, what we mean by direct expenses, by actual expenses, what we mean by reasonable and necessary, and allocable. The next page is the personnel table for the county or tribe employees. This is only different from the subaward personnel table in that we need them kind of tracked separately. So we want all the county and or tribe personnel on one table, and then each subaward personnel will be on individual tables depending on how many subawards you may have. You may not have subawards, and then that wouldn't matter. So you need to just fill out each column here. I think they're pretty self-explanatory. The only one that I might draw your attention to is the percent time devoted. I think that this trips people up a little bit. What we mean by this is the percent of time devoted to the grant funded program. So for example, if you have someone that works for the county and does juvenile and adult diversion, say they're 30% adult and 70% juvenile, you would put 70% time devoted. Then if you look over to percent salary requested, you could be 70% devoted and 100% requested if you were only requesting 70% of their total salary. That could also look different if they were that 70% time devoted, but you were only requesting 50% of that. And so that's what that means. I know a lot of people think to themselves, well, of course we're 100% devoted to our job. What we mean is by the CBA covered portion of that job. The next part of that is the personnel table breakdown. You need to fill this out for each position listed on the table above. I don't think we changed anything this year. I think that for question number 5, we were a little more specific. What we're trying to put together is a whole picture. As you know, we have CBA and JS grants, so we will know if there's a position that's funded partial from those two, but then we don't always know if there's another even crime commission grant that may cover a portion of it, or outside the crime commission. We don't know. So we would like to know the funding source, if it's county funds, if it's a different grant, and then just the percent of that total. So if you're 70% CBA funded and 30% JS funded, that would be that. It needs to equal 100%. And that's explained again in the RFA on page 15. Then question number 6, are existing funds currently allocated to support this position that will be used for different purposes if the request is awarded? So it's another way we're talking about supplanting. We just asked it a little differently because I think that there were some questions about that, but I think that this is a more clear way to ask that. Then on number 9, if you look down on part 2, section V or IV rather, for other. So we do want to know the fringe type and the amount. So if you have long-term disability that you're requesting, please put LTD and then the amount that you're requesting for that. If you're requesting life or anything else, I'm trying to think of what other examples are in there. There are some other smaller fringes that can be requested that aren't covered with FICA retirement or insurance, but we do need to know which is which and what the amount requested for each is. I've been seeing a lot of just the amount, and then I'm having to bounce back and ask more questions. So if you could just fill that out, it just saves us time in the long run. Travel is pretty unchanged. I don't know that anyone needs me to go over this step by step. The one thing that I would mention, I have seen people split up on multiple lines the same requests. For example, if you're going to NJJA, you would just put your diversion officer as the position. You would put NJJA conference as the travel, and then you could put your mileage, your meals, and your lodging all on that same line item. So the total request is the request amount you're requesting for that individual travel purpose. On a second line, you might have diversion, meeting with youth, and then you might have additional mileage just for that. So each line can be its own purpose. It doesn't have to be split up any more than that. A lot of you only have so many travel requests, and so there are plenty of lines. If you want to continue splitting it up, that's fine. It's just not necessary. And then, as we know, mileage is set as it's set right now, and then that will change next spring. So you write it in for what it is currently, and we will deal with the change moving forward. Operating expenses. Again, these are pretty much the same. We did add the examples this year on here just to kind of show you what we mean by the detailed breakdown of costs. I know that we changed this table last year and there was a little bit of confusion. This is how we would like to see this broken down. So if you're requesting postage, we would like to know how many rolls of stamps at how much equals then the total amount requested. Same for incentives and food for youth. As you can see for food for youth up on top, we might show that we're buying 15 Sonic gift cards at $5 equals 75. We might show that we're purchasing 15 Subway gift cards at $5 for 75. Again, these are just examples, but that is how we would like it broken down on this table, just to be really clear and so that we don't have to bounce back with any questions. For the questions below, we do need to know for each individual operating expense above how each request is necessary to meet the goals and outcomes and how it is reasonable and cost effective. I don't need a separate table for each expense. You can just write it in kind of a paragraph form, one line for each line item to explain that. If you want to do a separate one, you know, a whole separate 1 and 2 question or A and B question for that, you can, you just don't need to. And then for number 2, this only applies if you are requesting program equipment. But again, we would need these all filled out as to why, if it's being replaced. And then of course, our procurement policy, as stated in the RFA, we do need 3 quotes. For contracts, again, this really hasn't changed at all this year. Last year, we changed number of occurrences. We think that this is maybe a little bit easier number of occurrences. I can't even think of what it was before, but it was number of time. Anyway, so number of occurrences. So you might have the program title needs to match the program type table with would have been explained in previous video. So however you have that labeled on the program type table, it needs to match on here. So you would have that, and then the service type, family support or community youth coaching, EM, whichever. So it would say ATD, EM, whoever is the provider, what the rate is, and again, this has to be based on the reimbursement rates for DHHS or probation. It has to be for similar service. It has to match those rates. That's what we'll reimburse. So whichever the rate is on those rate sheets, and then how many occurrences you are assuming that you may see this next year, and then that total. And then as always, the totals at the bottom, and this will be the total that you show on your budget summary on the first page of the budget. And then there's a few questions for contract narratives, just describing the service and the referral process to the service. If there's an application process to determine service, I know some of these of you will probably laugh at this because you're in a rural area and you may only have one option. So there's no such thing as an application process. You can just put that as the reason for that. some of the larger counties may have a process that they go through, and that's what we're asking about. So, and then any contracts, you should have a contract in place with the provider. The county should have a contract, but we are asking for that. And then we do need to know that the service is following our steps of allowable, cost effective, and necessary. So we would like some details about that. Here we have the subaward budget summary. This is where you're going to list all your subawards, the agency's name, and then the columns showing their total expenses. You may only have one, you may have none, you may have several. And then this total will match the total again up on the budget summary, the first page. This total will match the subaward total on that. And then there is a subaward narrative this year. And this, again, we just want to know which other grants they're receiving. And this, as the lead of the grant, you may not be filling this out for them. Hopefully they will be filling this out themselves. And then we want to know the scope of services that they provide, just to get a better idea of what the program is. And again, I'm not going to go through each individual table again because they are the same, but you will notice that they say subaward personnel. They will also say subaward travel and subaward operating expense and subaward contracts. So make sure you're only putting your subawards on this. You can see that it says agency name. That's one difference. So we do want to know, we do want each table labeled with which subaward it is. So if you're subawarding to your county's public school, it needs to say such and such county public school system or school, whichever, and then have all the positions for that program. At the end of each subaward, there will be a subaward total. Again, you need to fill out the agency, and each of these columns, each of these categories, the total for the total amount requested, again, that needs to match back to the subaward table, and then those will be added and totaled to match the budget summary table, the first page of the budget. Again, this is just a lot of checks and balances to make sure all of our math is adding up and is the same. I went through that kind of quickly just because there weren't a lot of budget changes, and most of you are pretty familiar with our budget, the application budget form at this point. As always, if you have any questions, please reach out. Don't be frustrated. Don't be confused. Reach out and ask questions. And as always, we want feedback. So if anything's not working on the application or is unclear, please let us know. I know not everyone likes the changes that we make to the application every year, but I assure you it's because of feedback and us trying to make things as simple as and clear, more importantly, as we can. Thank you for your time.